Everybody, welcome in the Red Zone. Sean Brown, Michael Johnston here, and this is it. This is the last show of the season where we predict the national championship, break down the game. I've got a lot to talk about. But Sean, before we get into that, because a lot has happened in the past week, and I think the biggest news was Texas firing Tom Herman after the AD said he was going to be their coach next year. That came out of left field, really. I know people are unhappy with Tom Herman, but I don't know about that move.
He basically, Del Conte came out and said, I have a policy where I don't talk about coaching changes until after the season. But what do you do? Just lie, or you can go up there and say, we're not talking about anything, until after the season. But then it leaves it up into the air. But it was the worst kept secret. I mean, Longhorn fans didn't want to keep him. OU fans did want to keep him, so
here's my deal, and it's my quick take on this though. I'm not a Texas fan. I'll be honest with you. I'm just not. But I'm not really a Tom Herman fan either, because I think he's very immature. He's like a Lane Kiffin type, in my opinion. However, I think for Texas, this is a horrible, horrible move, and let me explain why. He was in his fourth year, which was a COVID year. He's won all 4 bowl games. Now I know beating Colorado is not a big deal, but and he's had Sam Ehlinger at quarterback since he's been there. Tom Herman, if you follow Tom Herman's career, his system and the success of his system is predicated on him having a quarterback for that system. As good as Sam Ehlinger was, or is, he was not a good fit for what Tom Herman wanted to run at Texas. Tom Herman made some changes and adjustments because Sam Ehlinger was his quarterback. But I think in the bowl game, and I know it was Colorado, and Colorado's not a great team, but with Casey Thompson, I think you saw what was coming. And the reality is, Dabo Swinney took over as an interim coach in 2008 at Clemson. Didn't win his first national championship until 2016.
7 years down the road.
7 years down the road as a full-time coach. You don't win overnight. And I know this change with Sarkisian coming in, all the Texas fans and the Texas administration, they all want to win now. But it takes time. You have to build it. And I think Tom Herman was getting there. I really do. I think if you gave him the 5th year or the 6th year, I think you would have saw massive improvements. I think Texas was on the verge of it's going to be tough beating OU to win a Big 12 championship. But it was there, and they were on the cusp of being a playoff team. They were getting there. Now it's a reset button.
Here's the difference, though. If all those things were the case, he would probably still have a job. It was recruiting. They lost out on the top players in Texas. They lost out on the offensive tackle that went to Alabama. They lost out on a ton. They've allowed Ohio State and Alabama to just come and raid Texas over the last few years. And when you lose legacy kids, and the name is right on the tip of my tongue, Tommy is one of the kids. Then he's got a brother who's an offensive lineman.
But some of that is not, yes, some of that's on the coach. But a lot of that is also on the university and the administration, because there's so much inconsistency with constant turnover of coaches. You get rid of Mac Brown, then you bring in Charlie Strong because you couldn't get Nick Saban. Now you fire Tom Herman, but honestly, there were grumblings about him in year 2. And so there's no sense of consistency for recruits at Texas. And Sarkisian, honestly, what is he going to, no offense to him, but what did he do at USC? What did he do at Washington? He's had success as an offensive coordinator because he's out of Alabama under Nick Saban.
Well,
a lot of people have had success under Nick Saban.
He's going to come in and he's going to be able to say, I coach for a national championship.
So did Tom Herman
just
at 2014.
Tom Herman. I know.
Exactly.
And he started getting players, but then players started kind of catching on to Tom Herman's deal, and they just, you lose, not only do you lose, but you get flips, decommitments. You got to hang on to those guys. Whatever you got to do, you got to do it.
Well, if you look at, take Ohio State and Oklahoma, for example. They did it right. Bob Stoops had a guy on the staff in place, and there was a smooth transition to Lincoln Riley. Same thing happened at Ohio State. Ryan Day is on the staff. Urban Meyer steps aside, and they have a guy already sliding in there who's been part of that system, and it was a smooth transition.
Well, but Mac Brown wasn't just retiring. They fired him. They straight up fired him after, not winning, I guess, as much as winning the national championship. But I mean, yeah. Then, of course, what do you do with Charlie Strong? Like, and then now Tom Herman. It's just there's
yeah. And the money they had to pay for the buyout, to
$39 million. I mean, not just for Tom Herman, but the coaches too.
Right.
I think they need to flip the whole thing over. Sarkisian just needs to be allowed to bring in his own guys, whoever he wants to bring. He may bring over some people from Alabama. I was seeing, wouldn't it be just wild if Mike Stoops, because Mike Stoops is a defensive analyst over at Alabama.
Yeah.
And they were just saying, wouldn't it be crazy if they brought him over to be the defensive coordinator?
I don't know what I don't know how strongly he is, because he coached at OU and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
well, he was
don't
terrible
know,
against these new air raid, spread it out, throw the ball 50 times a game.
Could he possibly get Pete Goulding to come with him, the defensive coordinator?
Yeah, he didn't do. I mean, the thing is, Alabama's, and we'll talk about this a little bit in this game, but their pass defense this year is just horrid.
Yeah,
I mean,
so is Ohio State's.
Yeah, I mean, and so these legendary coaches that are coming up through the ranks, they're just not getting it done. I mean, who was the guy that was going to go to OU, and he just got fired at Florida. I forget his name, but anyway, he was defensive back coach. Oklahoma wanted him really bad. Florida got him, and he was a coach in the NFL. I mean, he coached the Washington Redskins, and now he'll probably go back to the NFL.
Well, I think there's a lot bigger issues at Florida. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I mean, the mindset and the mentality down there is not right for winning national championships.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
You don't throw your kids under the bus.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't make excuses, which is all SEC teams seem to do when they lose. Is make excuses. Okay. On from Tom Herman, let's talk about Iowa State. Matt Campbell on the flip side of that coaching spectrum. I mean, incredible what he's done at Iowa State.
Yeah.
Winning the Fiesta Bowl in convincing fashion over Oregon.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, the fact that, it seems like he's kind of, Mike Gundy said one time, I found my Yankees job. Like people just keep asking, is this a stepping stone? Wouldn't you rather go to Tennessee or somewhere? And he's like, this is my Tennessee. This is not a stepping stone job to me. So maybe at Iowa State, it's just a perfect scenario. He's got to win the Big 12. I mean, they got to step closer this year, but
and I compare Matt Campbell at Iowa State to Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M.
Yeah,
he's got that program going in the right direction, but to win the SEC, you got to beat Alabama.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing to do with Nick Saban still there. Beating Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley right now, it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the next step. And right now there is, even though Iowa State fans don't want to hear this, there is a talent gap there between Iowa State. It's closing, but there is a talent gap.
And it all boils back to recruiting. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the rich keep getting richer. When you see Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, even Georgia every once in a while, LSU, Oklahoma, the same teams end up rounding out the top 5 to 10 every single year. And until these teams start, I don't know if it's just in the beginning, there's every school starts saying the school needs to go against their compliance department because obviously these other schools are doing something, that they shouldn't, offering money. Every school does. I'm not saying, before we get into that tangent, but, some of these schools need to bend the rules a little bit. I mean, as much as they can, without just fully going in front of the NCAA.
I kind of feel like major college football is at a point where the NCAA is going to be left behind, and they're not going to be the governing body anymore. Yeah. I feel like that's where we're headed, really, with college football. I think that the days of the NCAA handing down punishments, and that's all done with. I think that with the college football playoff system, it was brought up several times in other bowl games about how irrelevant these bowl games have become because now with all the opt-outs and everything. And I just think that's going to become the governing body. So we're at that point where the NCAA is pretty much irrelevant in major college football. Quickly, it was heartbreaking for me because I picked North Carolina against Texas A&M. Yeah. They were in it, tied with 3:45 to go in the fourth quarter, and then they just they
A&M, man, you guys,
their pants or something.
You guys just, Florida was without production against Oklahoma, so I get the big win there, but UNC was without their top 3 producers on offense.
And they didn't make any excuses.
Over 2,000 yards and something like 40 touchdowns on the year. I mean, my goodness, and you're tied 3.5 minutes in the end of that game. Like, come on, A&M, you gotta show something more than that. The final score is not indicative of that game.
Well, and on the flip side of that, to me, Mac Brown didn't make any excuses for players being out.
Right.
Those players didn't make excuses. They didn't hum-ho around and say, well, we didn't have our top guys. No, they went out and they played hard, and you saw what was coming up next year. If that Florida game against OU is any indication, Florida's going to stink next year.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's their excuse, well, we didn't have our guys. Well, you don't have anybody ready to step up then.
Yeah.
So that was a complete disaster.
I mean, the irony was seeing some A&M fans, not all, but some saying, talking crap to OU because Florida didn't have all their players, and then they win their game and start, beating their chests. So
it's just SEC, man. They make excuses. They can't just take responsibility for how they play. Just got to make excuses. All right.
I will say big 5-0 for the Big 12 after
and 0-6 for ACC.
Yeah,
how about
after
that?
going I think 1-5 a couple years ago for the Big 12 and turn it around, and you can say meaningless bowl. Here's the thing: it's either meaningless, win or lose, or it's good if you win and bad if you lose.
Right.
So you can't have it both ways. I tend to take it as you win and it's good. Mm-hmm. If you lose, it's bad. And a lot of this is going into the next year. What do you have? Mm-hmm. Even playing the your younger guys and stuff, because Florida played a lot of their younger guys, the guys that are going to take over this program. And so even though they might not have the experience, it's getting a lot of those underclassmen some game time, and going into the next year, it's almost like it's kind of an unspoken thing. Like, this is the first game of 2021. It's not the last game of 2020. It's the first game of 2021. And so, that's kind of where you see quarterbacks. And now there's going to be a lot of portal, movement and stuff. So some of these teams will get better and some will get worse, but it's just crazy.
Last game I want to talk about before we start talking about the semifinals. I know they lost, but Cincinnati was impressive against Georgia. They really were. I mean, what they were able to do, and I mean, Luke Fickell has done an incredible job with that program.
And if Texas didn't call Luke Fickell,
well, Luke Fickell's not leaving Cincinnati, and this is why. His son is a 4 or 5 star offensive lineman who had offers from all these places like Clemson and everything. He's going to Cincinnati.
Wow.
So his dad's not going to leave.
Yeah.
He's not going to abandon his son. So he's there for at least 4 or 5 more years. Huh. And I firmly believe that it's only a few years away, whether we have realignment or whatever. Cincinnati is going to make the jump into a Power 5 conference. It's only a matter of time. And if the Big 12 was smart, they'd jump on them and
I've
get them in there right
wanted them
away.
too for a long time. Them in Memphis, I've wanted them. Houston's another team that I would like.
Boise State, BYU, any of those could be added to the Big 12.
Or else they'll get poached and then they start getting better. And
might get back down to the Big 8.
Yeah.
So, but I was really impressed with Cincinnati. Those kids played tremendously hard.
Yeah.
And for what Cincinnati accomplished, hats off to them.
Looks like Georgia found another Rodrigo Blankenship.
Yeah.
They got a kicker that just
that was pretty. Yeah, he's
that
impressive.
Game winner. Yeah.
All right, first semifinal, Alabama versus Notre Dame. I don't think anybody was surprised at the outcome. I personally am one that said Notre Dame, if you watch the ACC championship game, you come out of there knowing there's no way Notre Dame deserved to be in the playoffs, but they only have one loss, and they're a brand name, and the committee does what the committee's going to do. They're not. I don't think they are very honorable in what they do. But so they put Notre Dame in, and we got a snooze fest for a semifinal, which everybody knew was going to happen.
Yeah.
So
looking at the other games, it's like, man, A&M would have fared the same.
I think Oklahoma or Cincinnati would have been a better spot at number 4.
That's what I was going to say. In this not being I think that Alabama still would beat Oklahoma, but I think it definitely the point spread wouldn't have been 20 points.
No, it would have been close.
Maybe 12 or something, but because it's 8 right now. I mean, we're picking it at what, 7.5?
8. We'll just pick it at whatever it is right now. So 8. We'll pick it at 8.
So anyway, I don't know. It's interesting because this next year Oklahoma's on a title run. I would have loved to see them in the playoffs, but this wasn't. I just knew this wasn't going to be the year for Oklahoma, and I didn't even pick them in the Big 12 championship game.
Well, I think a lot of people thought Oklahoma State and Iowa State were the two. The two big.
Or Texas.
Teams. Or Texas.
Texas was one they were supposed to challenge. So.
Yeah.
Man,
it was a weird year with canceled games and all that kind of stuff.
Defenses will get better this next year with spring ball. Hopefully, they'll have some kind of a spring practice. Defenses will be able to start gelling a lot more than they did this year and implement new schemes and stuff. It's just it was tough this year. I mean, Alabama was 77th in pass defense or 79th.
Yep. We'll get into that.
Yeah, they've been slipping. So
second semifinal, Ohio State Clemson. I mean, if you watch the show, I picked Clemson to cover.
Yeah.
I could not be more happy to be wrong about a pick. Like I am so happy that I was wrong. That's just an Ohio State team we haven't seen all year long. I mean, bottom line, we have not seen Justin Fields play that way. We have not seen that defense play that way.
Yeah, they put their ground game and their passing game together at the right moment, and hopefully they can do it again.
I mean, Trey Sermon had 331 in the Big Ten championship game. I think he went for 197 against Clemson. I mean, that's
I'm
incredible.
wondering where that version of Trey Sermon was at Oklahoma. I mean, it's come out recently that Jay Bolaware, who went to Texas, kind of ran him off because they didn't have a very good relationship while Jay Bolaware was the running backs coach, and Baker Mayfield went and tweeted, how's Texas doing right now? They kind of got into it, but but no, I wish Trey Sermon the best of luck. He's earned himself a ton of money. I mean, he is just rocketing up faster than just about anybody. Maybe Justin Fields is going, up pretty high on the draft boards right now.
The fact that he came back and played injured, and listen, I know they don't disclose injuries, but I'm pretty sure watching that hit, I'd almost guarantee 100% that he's got at least one broken rib.
Yeah.
Which is going to affect him. It's going to affect him because he's still going to be in pain because you don't heal from that in 10 days.
Yeah.
So it's going to affect his running. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But the last thing I want to talk about the semifinal, that hit that everybody's out there like, why is he being ejected for that hit? He put his head down.
Right.
He speared him right in the middle of the back. That's an illegal hit.
If you screenshot the moment where his head is in the back and you see Justin Fields kind of like literally bent in half, that's the only time I've ever seen a picture where both players' backs could have been broken.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just was a crazy.
The whole point of this targeting, the whole reason why you get ejected if you put the crown of your helmet down is it's a safety issue, and it's more of a safety issue for the defense than because if you leave with the crown of your helmet, that could be spinal injuries.
Yeah.
And so the whole purpose of kicking guys out of the game is to try to get them to stop doing this because unfortunately there are a lot of bad coaches in the high school and youth ranks.
Yeah.
And the first thing you should be teaching a kid when they're playing, I mean, now we start tackle football at age 6.
Yeah.
The very first thing when you're teaching them to tackle is you keep your head up.
Oh, we couldn't.
I mean, you don't put your head down.
We couldn't
you just
wear.
Don't.
We had to earn a cowboy collar in high school by showing that you could tackle with your head up.
Yeah.
We couldn't wear one unless the coaches knew that you could tackle with your head up.
When I was, and I guess the rule has changed since then. I didn't realize that until somebody commented on that I put a post on social media. When I was taught back in the day, it was you hit them with your face mask right in the chest.
Yeah.
You wrap.
Drive up
and drive them to the ground. And that's how you were taught to tackle. Apparently, that's illegal to put your face mask in their chest anymore. So the idea is to get your head on one side or the other, get your shoulder pad into them and wrap. But either way, you don't drop your head. You just don't do it. And so all these people who are complaining that he got ejected from that game, I'm sorry, he should have been ejected. And I will go one step further. Running backs who dip their head to take on a hit should be ejected for targeting as well. I mean, it's a safety issue, guys, and we're dealing. Only a few years ago, the discussion was before COVID. It was concussions.
Yeah,
that issue is still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. We're not talking about it as much, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And so, yes, if these guys are going to drop their head, they need to be kicked out of the game. Absolutely. So, sorry, I went on a tangent there, but that's just how I feel about it. I mean, Shaun Wade got kicked out the year before for the same thing, and like I said, if you drop your head, you should be kicked out. Bottom line.
Although I do think there should be levels, maybe if it's a level 1, you only sit out for the rest of the quarter or something, or
a half,
or the rest of the half you can come back if it's the first half. And
I mean, there are some targeting calls that have been called where it's pretty clear in a slow motion replay. I mean, yes, there was helmet to helmet, but it was incidental. It wasn't intentional.
Even go back and watch that play, the hit on Justin Fields. It was pretty quick. I mean, the guy got to him pretty quick. He got down quick. And so, he didn't launch, but he did put his head down. You just can't do that. Yep. So that's why I think there should be different levels of it. Even sitting out the rest of the drive. Mm-hmm. I mean, indoor soccer has a 2-minute deal where you have a bad enough foul or the ref says you got to go spend, just like hockey's got, same thing with
Cincinnati
football.
had an offensive lineman kicked out of the game for targeting because the ball carrier had hit the sideline, and he comes in at the last second, and he was going to block the other guy, which he didn't need to, but to block him, he just put his head down and hit him in the head just with the crown of his helmet. Sorry, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, you ready to get to the game?
Yep.
All right. So national championship game, Alabama #1 against #3 Ohio State, being played in Miami, January 11th, 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, I believe.
Yeah.
This game, I'll just straight up be honest with you. Looking at this, and I've spent the last couple days just looking at the matchups, and primarily I've been looking at the offense and defensive lines because I really think that is what matters. In 2014, it was the biggest difference in the semifinal between Alabama and Ohio State. And back then, even though we weren't doing a show at that time, I told everybody hands down I thought Ohio State would beat Alabama, and nobody thought Ohio State had a chance. But I loved the matchup in the trenches, and I knew Ohio State had the advantage.
Yeah.
I see the same thing in this game. Ohio State has a huge advantage, and the biggest advantage is you have the #1 defensive tackle in all of major college football, Haskell Garrett, who's going up against Alabama's backup center, Chris Owens.
Yeah.
And so even though Owens played pretty well in the semifinal and there wasn't, Notre Dame didn't really challenge him that much, he's got his hands full in this one.
Yeah.
And I just think that Ohio State is, what are they ranked, 11th against the rush or something like that? I forget the exact ranking, but they're up there, second.
They're second against the rush, yeah.
So I think them, along with linebacker Pete Werner, who has done a fantastic job all year of taking on running backs one-on-one in those situations. Yeah. I really think Ohio State can shut down Najee Harris in the run game. I really do.
Tough.
But in the same token, though, Ohio State's pass defense has been horrendous.
Yeah.
116th, I think, is what they're ranked, or something like that.
Was that?
I think that was one.
Yeah, it was 116th. Alabama's 79th in the country, and granted, Alabama's played, 12 games now?
Yeah.
13 games?
And they've won every game by at least 15 points.
Yeah.
So that's a point of...
And Ohio State's only played 7 games. So you stretch those out, you're going to have a couple of games where you shut some teams down, and that brings your average down. So, you have less games. It just takes a couple of games of really high potent offense, Indiana,
but
somebody to pass for a lot of yards to make your averages go way up.
And you're right, absolutely. But again, getting back to the matchups as well, Ohio State's offensive line going against that Alabama defensive line.
Yeah.
Man, Trey Sermon set up to have another 200-yard game. I mean, I think he's going to run wild. Alabama, we've seen they've been suspect on defense this year. They are not solid.
They are number 13 in the country in rush defense, so they can get some stops. But Trey Sermon's just playing at it's going to be a fun matchup to watch the wide receivers and the running backs for both teams. I mean, this one's going to be, this should be a good game.
So some keys here for me for Ohio State. One is got to get those passes out quick.
Yeah.
And Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Njigbo.
Smith and
Jigbo are going to have to run precise routes, get open. It's going to have to be quick hitters. I don't think Justin Fields is going to be able to sit back there and buy time. The rib injury is going to be a factor. I don't think he's going to want to run as much because he doesn't want to take a hit. So that's going to limit the offense a little bit by not having that threat of Justin Fields taking off.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, for Ohio State, I mean, you're talking about one of the best pass offenses in the country with Mac Jones and DeVonte Smith, and Shaun Wade's going to be matched up against DeVonte Smith. Shaun Wade has had a lot of penalties, pass interference penalties, and he's got to fix that. He can't be doing that against DeVonte Smith. I think the key for Ohio State in limiting Alabama's passing attack is that front seven has got to get to Mac Jones quick. They got to pressure him and force him into making mistakes. Yeah. If he is given too much time, if he's given 3 seconds or more in the pocket, he's going to tear apart that defense. Yeah. I really think so.
Yeah. I mean, he's just got to be on after that hit. There were a few balls. I mean, even that interception in the end zone. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know it was tipped, so that was just a duck coming out of there, but there were a couple more throws that just were not tight. It looked, he was still making them, but it just looked like he was having to put everything into it. Yeah. And, I mean, he was throwing darts even after that hit, but some of those passes just, it made me nervous for him.
Well, one of the things Ohio State did really well in defense against Clemson that we just, I haven't seen that out of this defense all year long, but they brought pressure almost every play. I mean, and they were getting to Trevor Lawrence, and they were getting sacks, and they were getting hurries and knockdowns. Same approach. I hope they don't switch it up and try to be conservative or get into more zone. They're going to have to match up man-to-man. And honestly, Alabama's wide receivers have the advantage if Ohio State goes man-to-man. But if you sit there and play zone with the talent they have, I mean, yards after the catch will be huge. Yeah. I mean, you can try to take it away, but they'll just run in the middle of that zone, catch it, and take off. Yeah. And Ohio State this year, Clemson game aside, has shown that they're pretty suspect in the secondary and not able to stop the big play at times. So, bottom line, this game, Alabama is an 8-point favorite. I'm going to take Ohio State to win the game.
Yeah, it's going to be an offensive just showcase. Yes. I mean, there's just so much talent on both teams. Skill position, it's just going to be, NFL scouts are going to be drooling over this game because of how much production is going to be out there on that field. Alabama's 32nd in the country in total defense. And then Ohio State is number 41. So there's not really a huge difference. Ohio State was giving up, 370 yards total of offense, and Alabama was giving up 353. So just about a 17-yard difference per game. Yeah. When you look at defense, their total defense, I would say the SEC probably has a little bit better offenses this year than the Big Ten. Yeah. So it's just going to come down to the defense. I mean, they say defense wins championships. Who can get more stops? I see it being a tighter game than 7 or 8 points. Yeah. Well, 7 points. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Ohio State to keep it close at least. Yeah. I have no idea who's going to win this game, but I think it will come down to the wire, and I think whoever has the ball last
could be a field goal. Could be a last-second field goal to win it. Yeah, so absolutely.
I'm going to take Ohio State.
Okay.
Keep it close.
Anything else you want to talk about before we close it out?
I think that's it.
My dog's getting antsy to get out. So, okay.
Did you pick?
I did. I said I'm taking Ohio State to outright win the game. Yeah. So, and what was the over-under? We were going to...
Oh, yeah.
You know what that was? We're going to go ahead and throw that out there. And
next year, I think we're going to add over-under. We've had a couple commenters ask us if we could add that to the game. And the total is, 75. I'm taking the over.
I'll take the over on that for sure. I think it's an 81 plus.
Yeah, I think the Florida-Oklahoma game was like 62 points. I took the over on that. I just knew it was gonna. And Florida came through in that fourth quarter touchdown, and I was I was happy about it. I was like, hey, it gives the ball back to Oklahoma to end the game, and I take the over and I win it. So.
Okay. Both have the over. Both taking Ohio State. Okay. That's it for this season. We are done for a little while.
Quick.
Maybe come back and maybe do a recap or give our thoughts on the national championship. We don't know about that yet. Yeah. But as far as picks go, this is it until next year. We'll keep you updated with spring ball and things like that. Occasionally do videos here and there. But thank you guys for watching all year long. It's been really fun. Hope you enjoy the national championship game, and we will see you for the 2021 season. Take care.
See you guys.